In my last CRX video, I restored the knuckles and I modified them to accept the new axle shafts. They turned out really nice. If you're interested, go check out that video, but I also teased of installing a radiator. So let's go ahead and do that today. Here I have the Husk Performance Radiator install kit, and it pretty much comes with everything you need to mount a Volkswagen radiator in your CRX or your EF. You can see it has instructions, not the best instructions, but it's there. I think they would have been better off with a really good YouTube video instead of some printed instructions, but that's just me. So I'm removing these like factory tow hooks off the CRX because I don't think I'm going to need them. And we have to start to cut into the original radiator support, and everywhere that you have to cut is inside of the instructions provided, so make sure you follow everything. If you're wondering what radiator I'm using, it's the Husk Performance aluminum radiator. It's basically been retrofitted to fit the CRX. It's actually a Volkswagen radiator. And no, this is not a sponsorship. They did not send me anything for free. I paid for all of this stuff out of my own pocket, okay? I'm just showing you guys what I have, and that's it. So the reason I went this route is because this radiator is small and it can be tucked away and just give me a little bit more clearance. You know, putting a K series in a CRX, clearance is tight. So I'm trying to make this thing work with what's already tried and true instead of trying to reinvent the wheel with this thing. So after cutting out enough of the sheet metal, it's time to start test fitting these parts. And I still have a lot more cutting to do, but at this point I could kind of get an idea of how this is going to work. And as you can see, I'm using clamps to try to get everything in place. Keep in mind, this is a DIY friendly kit, meaning it's a bunch of nuts and bolts and riv nuts, so really DIY friendly, okay? But you see this movement, all this play, how flimsy the sheet metal is getting after you cut all this stuff out. Yeah, I'm not liking this, guys. It doesn't seem up to my standard. I don't like the flimsiness. I'm not saying this is a bad kit. It's great for a lot of people and it works for a lot of people. It's tried and true. But I have the tools and the capability to do something else. So I'm going to ditch this. I'm only going to use a portion of this kit. And like the other 90% is going to be me fabricating things. So I think I'm going to make my own radiator mount.
I'ma make you mine tonight. Pulling your hair, baby. I feel you breathing on me, on you. You know that I'm a selfish lover. When it's mine, I want it. One track mind for it, for you. I don't think I can let you go. I don't think I can let you go. Bet you love me before I go. Bet you love me before I go. I don't think I can let you go. I don't think I can let you go. Bet you love me before I go. Bet you love me before I go. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you need, baby. Tell me about your dreams. Tell me everything, yeah. Do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. Party's never over for me. My favorite Toy Story. Bo Peep is chasing me. Woody, let me be a fantasy. Swiss Army King, they call.
I'm going to weld the support bracket for the radiator onto the steel bar, and once I weld it in place, there's no way to get any rust protection underneath it, so right now is the time to do that. So I'm just going to paint the entire bar. It's just the easy thing to do, and sure, some of it's going to get burned off or ground off when I go to weld it, but at least I get some paint underneath the metal, if that makes any sense.
You love me before I. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you need, babe. Tell me about your dreams. Tell me everything, yeah. Do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. Tell me what you need, baby. Tell me what you want.
These factory tow hooks that I removed earlier, I decided they could actually be pretty useful here, and I'm going to incorporate the radiator support bracket into them. So instead of having this thing fully welded in place and that's pretty much it for it, I'm actually going to bolt it into the factory location of where these tow hooks used to be, and that way from a maintenance perspective I could actually remove this whole radiator support in the future if I ever need to get in here or gain more access. So I think it's a pretty sweet idea. I need to weld on these brackets, but as you can see they're covered in paint and rust, so into the sandblaster they go, and they look like brand new parts now. But that's just going to make them easy to weld onto, and the bolts pretty much got the same treatment. Not that I'm going to be using these bolts in the final build, but it just helps when you have to constantly remove and reinstall this part that the bolts are nice and clean and they thread in pretty easy. For the time being, I'm going to go ahead and tack in this lower brace. Now it's not going to stay like this, like I just said. This whole thing is going to be bolted in place, but the tacks really help me to hold this thing in place without using clamps. It just makes the job a lot easier. I know it's a quick test fit, but as you can see the radiator does fit in through this opening. Now there's going to be things in the way in the future like the brace that comes down and the fans and all that, but still the opening is big enough to accept the radiator. I'm happy with that. These brackets were also supplied with the kit, and I'm going to go ahead and use them for now because they technically do work, but I don't feel like they're at the correct angle that I need them to be, so I am going to have to modify them. There was a lot of test fitting and time that went into all of this, and surprisingly it came out pretty level, which is weird because I wasn't really aiming for this. I didn't even think about it when I was setting all this stuff up, but as you can see with the digital level, it's pretty dang spot on, so I'm happy with that. I can't really complain. Unfortunately the radiator is super close to the alternator and it's not going to get any better, guys, so that's a problem for a different time. Let's keep focusing on this. We have to make a bracket coming off of the tow hook bracket from back there. It has to fit between the radiator and the body of the car, so it's no easy task, but I'm going to keep chipping away at it. And what I'm going to do is get this one long piece of bar, and I'm going to weld it from one of the tow hooks all the way across to the other one. That way I know that they're on the same plane and everything is level, if that makes any sense. So I want to get the brace that's connecting these two tow hooks to be identical, and then I'll go ahead and cut the brace where I need to. As you can see, the new radiator support is way stronger than the old sheet metal that was here, and it's more than adequate for the job. It might even be overkill, but that's just kind of how I do things. One thing I don't like about the radiator is the drain valve. So you can see I'm turning it in right now, and you would think that's closed, right? But nope, that's fully open. In order to close the valve, you have to fully turn it out. It's counterintuitive. And it just, I'm not liking it. That's what it comes down to. Okay, so I'm gonna have to change this valve in the future. For now, I'll deal with it. Let me put everything back together one more time just so I could show you how everything fits. As you can see, I don't have a lot of space to work with, so I wasn't able to use that square tubing, but I was able to fit a flat piece of steel bar inside of here, and it was just enough to clear the radiator and the sheet metal. And of course, I did the same exact thing on this side, making sure to come at the correct angle to clear everything. So far, I'm like 90% happy with the brace that I made. It needs some tweaks, but it's pretty good. Now this is the main like brace for the hood latch up top. When you go to close the hood, this is what supports it and stops it from deflecting. So this needs to be mounted, and of course, since I changed the support, there's no mounting spot for this thing, so I have to make it. Now I made the marks right here, I scratched it out, but I'm like, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right here. So sure enough, I put my digital level on it and it was not straight up and down. It wasn't 90. So I moved that over. Thankfully I caught that in time, because if I would have went through all that effort to put threads and have this thing bolt down only to find out it's not straight, it would have bugged me until I went out there and fixed it again. Now if you look at the brace where the bolt goes, it's not completely flat, it's at an angle. So I'm just going to use another piece of flat steel bar here, and we're going to weld this in place and tap it.
I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still tryna fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on. Make me put my hands on my head like the Macarena. They want you walking on board like Kima. And give a F to you like John Cena. Putting blood on the brand new Beamer. Tryna earn they stripes like Adidas. You get cold when you ride with the heater. It'll turn you to a dog like a keto. And expose with cat like a cheetah. They smoke my partner like reefer. Dímelo porque o no entiendo. Mi gente must really need Jesus. They shed real blood. I never seen the crypt and I believe it. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Y'all just talk, don't live it. And just took that route that's seen it. And I'm so outspoken like Reason. Jimmy Neutron, boy, young G's. And I'm a self-made man out of Sweden. And it's still off top, I'm tweaking. But I still gotta fight my demons. I ain't no good, I'm evil. I ain't been clean since Eden. It's a war going on outside. Make you put your hands on your head like the Macarena. That's why I gotta watch my demeanor. You know they locking up blacks and Latinos. It's the same old game, ain't nothing really changed but the mileage on the meter of the Beamer. You get cold when you ride with the heater. It'll turn you to a dog like a keto. And expose with cat like a cheetah. They smoke my partner like reefer. Dímelo porque o no entiendo. Mi gente must really need Jesus. They shed real blood. I never seen the crypt and I believe it. It's too easy. Too easy. Too easy.
So when I was first trying to gather information for this project, I went to VTech Academy's YouTube channel and they recommended these hoses right here. So I got the part number, I ordered them, and look how loose they fit. So I don't know what to tell you guys other than they didn't work for me, nor do they fit on the radiator side. They are just way too loose. There's no amount of clamping that you could do to these hoses that's going to make them seal. Look at that. It's not going to happen, guys. So my recommendation is just go with the silicone hoses. Here I got a set of hybrid racing and another set of silicone hoses that I just picked up on eBay for like a kswap. And yes, I had to buy 2 expensive sets, and the whole point here is to splice them together and make something that's functional. But you can see the difference immediately. Look how nice and snug these hoses fit. That's how it should fit. So don't waste your money on those other generic hoses. Just get the silicone set. And here's what I'm thinking. I'm just trying to find a combination that fits my application. So I'm going to put one on top, one on bottom, and we're going to join both of these hoses together. So I'm thinking we're going to go ahead and splice them together right here in the center. It looks pretty good to me. It's a nice flat spot to do that. But as I was messing with this hose, I'm like squeezing it and I hear something like, I don't know how to describe it, almost like plastic bag on the inside. I'm like, well, that's not normal. So I look inside of there with a light And sure enough, we have a piece of plastic that was wedged inside of there right out the box, a brand new part. So guys, just keep your eyes open for something like this. If that were trapped in there and you didn't notice it, yeah, you might have some cooling system issues, because that could easily get trapped somewhere inside your engine or your water pump and damage something or overheat your engine. It won't be nice. I'm using a proper hose cutter for this because I want that nice clean edge, and you can't even tell that someone cut this. It looks like it came right out the box like that. So right tool for the job. I'm going to be using this aluminum coupler that I bought off of eBay, and I do trust something like this, especially with these OEM type clamps. I have no doubt at all that these things are going to seal, and we should not have any leaks from this. So I'm not worried about it. You shouldn't be worried about it. Because I've had some people ask me, well, is that going to leak right there? Why would it leak? It's just a connection. If it's a proper connection, it should not leak. So I don't know about you, but I think this came out really nice, and I think it looks super clean. I'm actually really happy with the way this turned out. And all I did was apply this same exact method to the lower radiator hose. The only difference is I was able to use one of Hybrid Racing's radiator hoses, the full thing, without cutting it. So in the bottom here, this lower one, it's a complete hose without splicing at all. All I did was on the very end, I put the elbow on, and that's it. Now I could see some of you saying, well, that hose is kind of long, isn't it going to sag once it has the weight of the coolant in it? And I thought about that. Don't worry, it's not touching the engine anywhere. It may look like it's close, but it's not. So what I'm going to do is actually make a bracket coming off of the engine, and the bracket's going to support the radiator hose, so we won't have anything sagging and possibly get damaged over time. Here I have a BMW oil pan plug, and you're probably wondering, well, why do you need that? Well, the K-tuned thermostat housing has this port on it, which for the longest I didn't know what I was going to do. Some people put a temperature sensor in here, but I've also read that you don't want to put your temperature sensor here because you won't get accurate readings off of it. So someone please leave a comment if you know what I should do here. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and plug this off, and it just so happens that the BMW oil pan plug fits perfectly. At this point, the cooling system should be 100% sealed, and the key word is should be. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull a vacuum on the system. There's many ways you could test this. I'm gonna try 2 different ways. I'm not gonna try the traditional, like fill it up with water or coolant and pressurize it, because I just don't want to deal with that mess of having water or coolant everywhere. So I'm gonna try the vacuum test first. And this just pulls a vacuum on the entire system. It is an acceptable way of doing this. As you can see, it's pulling a vacuum on the whole system right now. I'm going to go ahead and close it right now while the system is in the yellow section on the gauge. And if we look at both of the hoses, you can see they are collapsed. So that's a good sign that it's working. And if I release the pressure, you can see everything goes back to normal. So I went ahead and did this test off screen, and it took about an hour and a half for it to lose its vacuum. It's not great. It should hold vacuum as long as you kept it like that. So obviously there's a problem. We'll come back to that. I just got the new radiator fan and shroud in from Hush Performance. So yes, another part from Hush Performance, and this thing fits perfectly, almost like it was made for it. And that's the true story of how I lost my hair. Anyway, you can see the fan and the shroud is installed. It fits perfectly, just as I expected. And I think I made the right call on going with the single fan setup, because here on the left side you can see there's clearly no way a second fan was going to clear that lower radiator hose. It's just not going to happen. Unfortunately, you could see the bottom of the shroud and the radiator is hitting the alternator. So I'm going to have to space this thing a little bit further forward, but I'll do that off camera. I won't waste your time. And here goes the second test that I want to do in the cooling system, which is a smoke test. You wouldn't normally do a smoke test on a system like this, but I figure if we have a leak somewhere, maybe this might show us where the leak is at, so it's worth a try. I'm just gonna pump it right into the filler neck. So I tried with the smoke test for a while, and I just kept looking with my light, and guys, I could not find any signs of smoke pouring out of this thing anywhere. But we know there's a leak because it bled off the vacuum slowly. And if you look at the gauge here on my smoke machine, it has a small float, and that float moving up or down dictates on whether there's a leak or not. And you could see as I pinch the hose and I release the hose, you could see the float starts to move. So that tells me there is a small leak somewhere. I just don't know where it's at. I don't think we're going to be able to pinpoint it right now. It might be one of those situations where I'm just going to have to fill it with some sort of liquid and pressurize the system and look for the leak the old-fashioned way. Time for some updates. I don't know if you could tell, but the radiator is slightly slanted. I did end up moving the lower end of the radiator forward, and I did that by cutting the bracket I made, and I pretty much put a 1-inch extension on it. You could see this is the extension I added to bring the whole bracket a little bit more forward in the car, and that caused the radiator to be slanted, which is perfectly fine. But look at this massive gap that we have between the alternator and the radiator. There's no way that's going to come in contact anymore. So I'm happy with the way this turned out. That's a fix. Moving on to the lower radiator hose bracket, I thought it might be an issue if it starts to sag, so I came up with this, 2 pieces of metal welded together. You can see it has some distinct features, and I'll show you what that's for in a second. It's fresh out the sandblaster, that's why it looks so nice. Even the bolt got sandblasted because it had a ton of rust on it. But this is what I'm going to use to retain the hose. It's like a specialty zip tie. You see the notches on the bell housing right here, that's all from factory, and that's why I had to notch out my bracket to accommodate that. And what this does is it pretty much locks the bracket in place and prevents it from rotating under vibrations or anything like that. So I thought it was pretty dang clever. I don't know, guys, you got to give me at least a thumbs up for that one. So of course you would go ahead and snug this down with a ratchet, but I'm just giving you a demonstration. Now we would grab our zip tie and wrap it around the hose. And now I could go ahead and push the zip tie through the hole that I drilled on the bracket, and ooh, that is just so satisfying, isn't it? It's like a OEM mounting bracket. It just gives me the warm fuzzies inside. So we'll go ahead and tighten up the zip tie, and of course use the flush cutters to go ahead and cut off the excess. And let's give it a quick shake. Look how nice and solid that is. I'm super happy with the way this turned out. Of course the bracket needs a coat of paint. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you found it at least entertaining, please give it a thumbs up. And here's a sneak peek of what we're going to be messing with in the next CRX video. So I hope you stop by once again. And like always, thanks for watching.